forum. So, Sonny, go ahead if you've started the recording.
Okay. I have indeed.
Excellent. Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Public Safety Communications Task Force meeting. It is 11:17 on August 9, 2023, and I'm Barb Neal. As a reminder, the meeting is being recorded and that recording will be posted publicly following the meeting. We don't have our usual administrative support this week, so it may not be up there just today, but we will get it up as soon as possible. So let's start with a roll call of the task force members. I can see everybody this morning. So Commissioner, good morning. Paul White, morning. Michael Wright. And Jim Mack. Yep, good morning. Also with us is Sonny Johnson. She's the 911 Board's Administrative Services Coordinator, and she is filling in this week for Callie Audette. So she'll be helping us with all our administrative stuff throughout this meeting and keeping us on track, hopefully, with votes and motions and things like that. Also, I see Philip Sisk has joined us. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning. I am on video because I'm stationary for this meeting. Usually I'm mobile and I have to go with just the audio, but yes, Phil Sisk with Mission Critical Partners. And we are a expert service provider focused on public safety. And I am located in Providence, Rhode Island. So that's where I'm speaking to you from today.
Excellent. Well, thanks for joining us. And Corey, I didn't see you before. So Corey Chase from Department of Public Safety, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, this is Corey Chase. I'm the director of the Radio Technology Service Group here at the Vermont Department of Public Safety.
Thanks for being here. Okay, next item, approval of the agenda or any proposed additions. Commissioner, do we want to move the congressionally directed spending discussion up one item so that we can tackle that first? Then we'll move to the RFPs potentially we'll need executive session for those, but at least they'll be lumped together. Good? Okay.
Yeah, I would propose that we move. I don't know if that's something we need a motion on. I'm sure Paul knows to change the order of the agenda as Barb just reflected.
I don't think we need a vote on that. I think we can just do that. Correct, Paul?
I'm going to be a stickler for Robert's rules, so it's fine with me.
Okay. All right. Well, Sonny will chime in if we're breaking the rules. So
if nobody objects, I think it's fine.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Okay, so we'll adjust the agenda as we just discussed, and let's move on to approval of the minutes from August 2nd, 2023. So those minutes were distributed late last week to task force members, also available on the webpage. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from August 2nd?
Move acceptance of the minutes from August 2nd.
Thank you, Paul. A second?
Second.
Okay, I got Michael first. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Raise your hand, please. Okay, looks like everybody. No one opposed. The minutes are approved. Okay, let's jump into congressionally directed spending or funding discussion. Commissioner, I will hand it over to you.
So at last week's meeting, it was only a week ago. Interesting. There's somebody in the waiting room, apparently.
Oh, okay.
Can you check, Sonny, to see if there's somebody in the waiting room?
Sorry, forgot I was muted. I don't see anybody in the lobby, at least not on my screen.
All right, just give me one quick memento here. One sec. I just want to find the link for the meeting. It's probably on the agenda, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Do we need it to forward it out to someone, or maybe Sonny could do that perhaps?
Yeah,
If
Sonny,
she's
if you
got-
can forward the meeting link that we published on the agenda, or indeed the one to get in here to Stephen Whitaker, that would be great.
Should be in
Yes,
your, should be in your calendar too.
I can do that.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks.
Okay.
Sonny.
So going back to the congressionally directed spending conversation from last Wednesday, the group had two choices that were known to the group. The discussion of prioritizing a computer-aided dispatch solution for all state first responders. We had talked about the proposal that came from RTS. It was not a fully vetted draft. We have more detail on that, but it's not, again, it's not, we're not going to pursue a fully vetted dot the i's cross the t's proposal until we know that's the direction, if that's the direction of the group. But we have a little more contextual information on that. And then at that meeting last week, we left it open for other ideas. Paul White proposed an idea relative to investing the $9 million in a trunked solution, but I'm going to let Paul, everybody should have received a copy of the proposal, or at least the general concept prior to this meeting. But Paul, for the sake of those who might not be on the task force email chain, can you give a bit of an overview about the option C as it is come to be known?
Sure. I guess in very vague layman's terms, I was proposing to spend the money to design and engineer a state-owned trunked system that would have built-in capacity to serve as the failover for all of these various regional dispatch centers that we are charged with designing and eventually rolling out. But to do that I think would require knowing what's currently out there, conducting the inventory of what's existing for towers and frequencies and licenses and all of that stuff. And that is all things that are contained in the RFP that we've been discussing. So it's a little bit of a, cart before the horse. And the reason I was thinking that way is I didn't, while both of the menu option A and B, the CAD and the other proposal, I think both are worthwhile, both are needed. I just didn't know that they necessarily satisfy the legislative charge and get us closer to getting to regional dispatch, which is what we're tasked with. Since then, since I sent this to you on Friday, given it more thought over the weekend, and thank you for sending the information on the CDS, the congressionally directed spending. Now that I have read that over, I don't know if any of these proposals necessarily satisfy the requirements of a COPS grant. But I guess I'm not sure where to go with this. I guess having received the additional information that was sent out yesterday about option number 2, I think the parameters around that congressionally directed spending money are such that I don't know that we could design something on such short notice to move forward. So I'm not to say I'm withdrawing my suggestion of option 3, but I'm not as bullish on it as perhaps I was last week.
It's fair to presume that option 3 would occur in the course of the rest of the designing of a system, because I don't know who that is, but we can admit them. At any rate, it's my understanding that would happen based on how the current wording of the RFP. Barb, go ahead.
My limited knowledge of radio systems is going to shine through brilliantly right now, but I was hoping that there was some short description of the distinction between what Paul was recommending or talking about in option C, so a trunked radio system, versus what was in the RTS kind of scope of work. So are we talking about different components of it's different infrastructure, I think, but if somebody could, and I don't know if it's Paul or Corey that might be able to address that, what the distinction is between those two proposals.
How about if I tell you what my understanding was, which is what prompted me to come up with option C, and then Corey can highlight my inadequate knowledge and tell us the real answer. The reason I put forth option C was that I felt that the option B that was presented to us was focusing just on the existing network. It wasn't expanding anywhere. It was hardening, it was improving, it was updating, it was buying a lot of new stuff that no doubt needs to be replaced, but it wasn't reaching out into areas where we hope to deploy regional dispatch centers. That was my understanding, and I could be entirely wrong.
I think that at first blush, when you received that first draft, that's a fair assessment, because the preliminary legwork was done internally, focusing on what we currently own and operate and maintain. So how does this benefit future regional operators or other communities that would seek to use our thing was not as clearly highlighted as when we gave it a little more thought and sent you the follow-up email for context. So I don't want to say much beyond that, but I think, Barb, your core question was about a trunked radio system, and I'm going to let Corey explain what that is, because I have a general sense, but I'm sure it won't sound as good as it will coming from him.
So Commissioner Morrison, I thank you for that. I have to say that I'm relatively new to this position, and I don't have a deep background in trunked radio systems. I can, however, tell you that right now the state system is set up for individual radios for individual user groups. So, for instance, the state police is on one frequency or one set of frequencies, and for instance, another user group is AOT, and they're on different radios on different frequencies. The idea of a trunked radio system is merging that kind of traditional land mobile radio systems closer toward a shared infrastructure like a cellular system, where many users use the same frequencies for different things. And by trunked, you have a different, instead of one radio isolated for one group and another radio for another group, you use the same radios and frequencies, but different users can share that core infrastructure.
And
so
one
as
of
a
the reasons,
general kind of, please.
go ahead, Corey.
No,
I was just going to say, as a general context to this, there's only X number of radio frequencies that and licenses that the FCC allows. So you can't just go add on more and more and be like, oh, we need more for this. So the trunked system is a little bit, for lack of a better word, like bundling. Instead of every communication group running in an individual lane, they get bundled together.
Pooling resources.
And pooling resources so that everybody has, or let's say everybody can get their message across at the time they need it. So you're using frequencies that are not currently busy, as opposed to talking over each other if you have a lot of traffic on one channel. It's
Okay.
a pooling of resources.
Some efficiencies there.
It's often done. Trunking is often done as Commissioner mentioned, frequencies and access to frequencies is it's a finite resource, and trunking, one of the great advantages of trunking systems is that you can use that resource more efficiently, so you can get more users in the limited group of frequencies that you have. It's important to note that efficiency gain comes at a cost. The cost is that technology is, as I mentioned, closer to moving toward the cellular kind of infrastructure, which is a significantly more complicated and more expensive solution. So it's not a simple undertaking.
Okay, and then I just have one more question if I can. Well, two comments really. One is I wonder, I know some of the conversations around how to spend this congressionally directed money have gone on for quite a while. And so one of my questions is what input have, I guess it would be the commissioner, what input have you gotten from people that will be impacted, stakeholders that will be impacted, say, if we went down the RTS proposal route? I know we've had some input here on the value of a CAD system. So Michael Wright was explaining his thoughts on that last week very well. But I'm just curious what the level of input has been on that RTS type proposal. And Sonny, do you have a question or something we're doing wrong?
No, I just wanted to let you know that I've heard from Stephen Whitaker that the link that I sent him is not working. So I will resend it, but I just thought I'd give you a heads up and let you know that he can't get in.
Okay, I'll forward as well, I guess.
I could say I used the link that's on the website, the task force website. I just used that link and came right in.
Okay.
All right, I'm typing that right now.
And I used the one that Callie had emailed to us on our calendars, and that worked fine.
As did I. So Barb, to answer your question about input on the RTS proposal, we have not shopped that around broadly publicly. I mean, we have to sort of remember the time frame that we found ourselves in, where it was late June before the budget was passed, and we were engaged actively with the COPS technology office trying to get this money out of that funding stream so that we could go back to the premise of making sub grants with the $9 million. And all of that sort of has in the last 6 weeks become clear that we're not getting it out of that funding stream. And we have to put forth a proposal, even if it is not completely nailed down, we have to give them something to get preliminary approval on by August 28th. So that's the time frame that we're working on. So we've not held any like hearings or shopped around the idea in any way.
Okay, but my only other comment will be whatever path is chosen for that, I think there needs to be a big component of gathering that stakeholder input as things go along, so that all of the stakeholders and voices that need to be at that table are heard, have a mechanism to be heard. So I know we have, well, I'll stop there.
So I guess we have a few more minutes for folks to provide input on which of the three choices they prefer that my team take the next 2.5 weeks to really focus on and get something turned in. Barb, do you have a preference?
I lean towards CAD, but that is only because, or mostly because that's what I'm most familiar with, and I can see, you know, what some of those impacts would be, and I'm less familiar with the others. So that's where I am.
Mike or Jim?
Well, as a dispatcher, I tell you, I'd lean towards CAD myself personally, but I also do understand the infrastructure behind where we're going, and that does need to be upgraded. So I could flip a coin either way on those two options. The trunked portion, I don't think is going to come until after you do some of the upgrades to the infrastructure anyways.
Mike?
I would say CAD, because of all the things that I've mentioned before. I think there's a lot of issues with CAD. There's a lot of delays. I think right now for our specific area and talking to most, EMS and fire folks, at least the radio system is for the most part working. There's obviously some weak spots, but I think most systems have improved on that. While I'd love to see a fully statewide trunk system, that certainly is there, but I think CAD definitely is something that we got to work on.
And Paul,
So I think both, if we're talking option A and option B, I think both are needed. Both are definitely something that we need to have. I think that ultimately it's up to you, Commissioner. I think you're obligated to consult with the task force, which you've done. I think whichever one you and your staff ultimately decide best satisfies the guidelines of the COPS grant is the one that you'll go with. I guess I would, while I agree that we need a CAD system, I don't know that a CAD system is going to help us get down the road towards regional dispatch. So I guess I would lean towards menu option B. I think
So I
that's just
think-
that. I think that's more of a direct, or directly gets us down the path of what this task force is charged with, not minimizing the need for a CAD system.
no, and I think that that's well said, that they're both very much needed. In my world of bad analogies, I see option B as being the backbone, and even the beyond the backbone, the skeleton of everything else that comes after, with CAD being the top hat. Like that's the implementation and execution of a now fully integrated system. It's not to say it couldn't work right now, but it would require buy-in from people as individuals outside the scope of the legislative requirement that we design a statewide system. So we'd be going department to department trying to get willing partners to engage with CAD, to agree on the same solution. It would be outside the umbrella if we do it under the CDS. It's not technically part of the design of a statewide system that has been legislatively mandated. And then we're going to get into a system where everybody wants something different. And so for me, it feels very dicey to try and pursue CAD through the CDS, the congressionally directed spending bucket of money, because it creates it as a standalone project. And there's a lot to disagree about when you talk about selecting and implementing and designing the back end rules of how CAD is deployed in the field, right? Whereas hardening the infrastructure upon which everything else is going to ride, there obviously will be differences of opinion, but it won't be nearly as diverse an array of opinions as CAD is going to evoke. And I know this well, having gone from New World Systems to Spillman and Spillman to Valcor in the course of my career as a police leader. So I do want to talk to Ron and Mayor Dungus, who are not here, to seek their input too before a decision is made. But if I were to have to point my team in a direction today, I would put them on the option B track. But thank you for your input, and I appreciate it. And probably we should move on to the next agenda item, Barb.
Alrighty, let's do that. We are, well, I'm going to keep it right with you. We are on to the RFPs. So we have a project management RFP to discuss and the subject matter expert RFP to discuss. I don't know if either or both of those need an executive session to discuss content.
The larger one, for the sake of being simple about this, we'll talk about the big RFP, which implicates many sections of the legislation. And we'll talk about the little RFP, which is specific to a project manager to serve this task force.
Jen,
I
I'm
am-
sorry. I think I made a mistake. I think we needed to have public comment opportunity on the agenda next before we move to the RFPs.
Okay. Yep, that's fine.
I think
we
yeah,
can,
sorry.
that's okay.
So we're at public comment. I see a few members of the public. Philip, do you want an opportunity to comment?
I would just, I would say echo the sentiment that the commissioner described related to how you spend those funds. The complexity, the number of vendors, the time frame it takes related to CAD, given the schedule that you're talking about, based on our experience, almost precludes option A. And it would just be more realistic to be able to focus on option B, and for my perspective. And then related to the RFPs, I did want to ask one question. Do you have a time frame that you currently project for them to be released?
We're hoping really soon. We're hoping next week if both get approved. I mean, whichever one gets approved, we're not necessarily going to hold one back because the other isn't approved. But as soon as they can be approved by this body, then we will run the final administrative checks on it through the procurement office and get them posted. So it is
Okay.
our goal to have them out by August 14th, if
Okay.
today goes well.
And
Thank you.
based on the discussions you've had so far, does the committee or does the task force envision one large subject matter expert RFP? I think that's what you just said, that if you were able to provide multiple subject matter experts, you would respond to that one RFP with the capabilities of all the subject matter experts that are applicable. Is that how you envision it?
If I understood your question correctly, yes. So
Okay.
the little RFP that I just mentioned, which I'm just refreshing my memory on because I haven't looked at it in a few days, is specific to a project manager who would work at the direction of this task force so that we have our own trusted partner to help us interface with the subject matter experts who would respond to the RFP that we are calling the big RFP, right? And that
Mhm.
does include multiple pieces of the legislatively required work, and a project manager would be envisioned within that big RFP as well. So it's
Okay.
not to have dueling project managers. Obviously, a vendor who replies will supply a project manager of their own, and we would like our own project manager to interface with
Gotcha.
that person to prepare reports for the legislature, to do some of the administrative tasks that are beyond the clerking these meetings and posting agendas and websites. So we need somebody who has some bandwidth and expertise on our team as a task force to help us complete the work that's required on our end. And to be able to do due diligence with whatever vendor is the successful bidder, right? That
Mhm.
somebody's keeping our eyes on the work that's
Gotcha.
happening, and we're not
Okay.
solely reliant on the successful bidder giving us status reports that we can't independently verify, shall we say.
Understood. Understood. And related to the subject matter expert RFP, yeah, in my review of the legislation, it does identify basically, if I'm going by memory now, 10 different topics as far as like technology, staffing, facilities, communications, cybersecurity is in there. You will be, I guess would say, do you envision being able to respond to all of those areas as part of one RFP?
You can, or
Okay.
the responder can, or the responder can choose sections of the big RFP
Okay.
to respond to.
That's what I
That's
need
all,
to know.
it's
Thank
all
you.
laid out very clearly.
Okay, thank you, man.
Okay, anyone else for public comment? Stephen, I see you're on the line.
Yeah, I had some trouble getting in, or different numbers on different agendas, which implicates open meeting law. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I think I've conveyed my comments to the commissioner regarding microwave upgrades and their relationship to regional dispatch. I don't see any point in going through those here. I concerned about attendance if both Ron and Donjus are missing today and Donjus missing last time. We're quickly getting to the point of ineffective governance. I have mentioned in a prior meeting that this task force needs to talk about recommending an advisory council to loop in the 10-year telecommunications plan, the broadband plan, et cetera, the interoperability plan. I just learned this morning that the 20 million that they emergency board took for grants to replace flooded appliances came from the middle mile matching funds for broadband, which directly implicates how we resiliently backhaul radio towers. So this is a much bigger topic than y'all have your head around yet, and I don't know how to fix it. But time is of the essence to get project management and subject matter experts on board. Time is of the essence to get a discussion around funding sources, sustainable funding sources for regional dispatch. That probably should be a separate RFP put on an agenda for the next meeting even. Pilot project, working the calendar back to get any approved pilot projects by year end necessitates some real focus, which I don't see this group having yet. I don't want to see it become another E911 board. And I've worked too long and hard on it. So I'll leave it at that for today.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. I see what appears to be another member of the public. I'm not going to be able to pronounce the name. So I'll just offer, are there any other additional comments from the public? Okay, hearing none. Now we can move on to the two RFP discussions, and I'll hand it back to you, Commissioner.
Okay. As I previously mentioned, in that the members of the task force have received advanced copies, there are what we will now refer to as the little RFP, which is specific to a project manager who would work for the task force. And then the big RFP, which we've seen multiple drafts of, and this group has had input to the entire document. I believe that if we are successful today, that we should be able to emerge from executive session with an approved draft of both documents, but that will remain to be seen. So it would be my suggestion that there's some standard language here that I know I'm supposed to say. Hold on.
Madam Commissioner, this is Steve Whitaker again. I have been requesting repeatedly, and I don't think it's appropriate for one co-chair to have veto authority on me getting eyes on the RFP, because I have been an instrumental architect of this integrated strategy, and I still have not had opportunity to make sure that essential pieces aren't missing. So
It is not one chair or the other. It is a group decision that we are not going to engage your services or others outside the folks who have helped develop it to this point, who are within state government or members of the task force.
So I would make a motion that the task force finds that premature general public knowledge regarding the content of both of the RFPs, the project manager and the subject matter expert, would clearly place the task force at a substantial disadvantage. Is there a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay, Paul, remind me, do we do discussion? We do. We do.
Yes.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of that motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See everybody. No one opposed. So that motion carries, and then I'll propose a second motion to move to executive session for the purpose of discussing those two RFPs and to invite Sonny Johnson to that session.
I second that motion.
I think you're gonna, I think he's gonna make that motion and I will second it. So moved is what Jim meant to say.
Okay, okay, that works. Any discussion? All in favor? I see, Jim, you're in favor of that, I take it? Yes, okay, thank you. No one opposed. We will move to executive session using the other link, and then we'll return to this one following executive session, and it is 11:54. I'll see you in the other room.